I'm wondering if I'm speaking to my generation. Does everyone here know who Voltron is? Yes? Okay, I expected that. Well done. Voltron is an anime cartoon about 6 robotic cats that come together and form a big, let's just say, mad cat. That might be all you really need to know for this piece. So this is called My Boldly Beautiful Voltron Epic. I couldn't have been older than 8. My mother, brother, and I were on summer vacation in Bombay in my grandparents' apartment, and my aunt and 2 cousins had just flown in. We were all splayed around the bedroom, on the bed and mattresses on the floor. Being the baby of the family, a title that time shows that I will never live down, I was in the center of the bed, as that was spatially economical. Our usual hour to 2 of unscheduled catching up had already occurred, and the lights had been turned off. It was time to go to bed. Maybe it was the excitement of my aunt's family that kept me awake. Or maybe it was the Ferrero Rochers. We didn't buy much chocolate back home in Muscat, but my mother and aunt always brought a shoebox full to Bombay to satisfy my grandfather's sweet tooth, which we younglings greedily picked at as well. Whichever it was, I couldn't sleep, so I thought to pass the time the way I usually did, by imagining a story. Except for the AC providing a heavy white noise that gave me a slate to fill with color, my creativity was limited. I could not very well imagine a personal story, as that would have been an egocentric tale of me triumphing over my elder siblings, and with them possibly awake and staring right at me from either side, it was too discomforting to try. The default option was to imagine a story from the Masters of the Universe world, the tale of He-Man fighting Skeletor and other evildoers. But, trapped between my brother and cousin, the sword-swinging action of He-Man could not be choreographed without the full use of my body. I thought perhaps the story could start with him being wrapped in chains and contained like I was, but I could not bring myself to believe that He-Man would ever get captured. With no way to give my hero the proper tributary story while maintaining the illusion of at least trying to speak, I turned instead to Voltron. I did not hold Voltron to the same standard as I did the perfect hero He-Man, and so sank into a story without reservations. Voltron was a very different experience for kids growing up in Oman than it was for kids watching it here in America, mainly because it was in Arabic. Furthermore, I did not know Arabic, so to me, it was a foreign cartoon in an alternate foreign language. Visually, the show was fantastic. 4 giant, primary-colored robot cats were joined with the ligaments of a 5th larger black cat to become the giant man-robot Voltron, who, as a result, had cat-faced hands and feet. In addition was a blue-faced evil king who was always stroking a rasping alien cat. I've come to know in my adulthood that many two-dimensional villains like having a cat's stroke, but this animated show was my first experience with the phenomenon. Each episode always had a strange robot or monster that Voltron would cut in half by the end of the episode with his energy sword, which he created by reciting a mantra while putting his cat-faced hands together. The problem, due to the language barrier, is that I was always vague on how the story added up. The character motivations, the history, the feuds, much of what I didn't figure out I had to make up. There was a love story angle in the show, but I saw the show so irregularly that I don't know where theirs ended and mine began. What I do know is that the cobbled together story I came up with that night went much further than any episode I'd ever seen. The story had an elegant princess. She was beautiful and always in pink. Because this was an Arabic cartoon, I wondered, where were these blonde and blue-eyed Arabian women who this character was based on? And, animation style aside, why did she look so much like Princess Peach from the Nintendo Mario games? She was the focus of a love triangle with 2 of the robot cat riders. It was clear to me that she and the black cat rider were meant to be together. She was the princess of the castle, and he controlled the central captive Voltron. Voltron might be able to get by without his blue cat arm or red cat leg, but there was no Voltron without the black cat body and head. So, by my laws of heroic ranking, these 2 were meant for each other. But, being the strong, silent, honorable hero that he was, Black Cat Rider never declared his love out of respect for his teammate. Ultimately, there was a marriage ceremony between Princess Pink and the Blue Cat Rider, that was more bittersweet than any I had witnessed in my years of watching The Bold and the Beautiful. But right after the vows were made, there was an attack. In my little niche on the bed, I shifted back and forth from my side to my stomach to hide me replicating the movements of laser guns shooting and swords being constructed out of photon energy. Doing this helped me live the action of chaos as the heroic black cat rider grabbed the hand of the groom as the ground was blasted away underneath him. But then something terribly unexpected happened. The black cat rider lost his grip. He let go. The groom, in either his suit or blue rider uniform, fell to his death in tragic, slow-motion Bollywood fashion. I was mortified. I thought that I should go back and redo it all, but that death had been too melodramatically perfect to not be the real story. I needed to know what was going to happen next, and so I went on. The failed hero began to question himself. He couldn't help but wonder if a part of him had let his partner fall out of jealousy. He went from being the strong, silent type to the dark, self-loathing hero who didn't trust his feelings with anyone. None of his teammates understood enough to get through to him. Only the princess knew the truth. But because their love had always been undeclared, she was afraid that changing that now would only push him further away. This was no good. The bedtime story that was meant to put me to sleep had now opened itself to a tragic, action-packed romance of epic proportion. I started to feel pressured. I had never before constructed stories that did not have happy endings. But these two had become so straight from each other that a quick fix was far from possible. And yet it was getting really late. And as fired up as I was, I knew realistically that I couldn't stay awake till morning in order to repair the damage I had done to these two. All I could do was continue the story towards its natural end, which would hopefully happen soon. It didn't. Black Cat Rider, or BCR as I call him, Black Cat Rider, BCR, and Princess Pink just grew further and further apart. BCR continued to lead the Voltron team successfully, but to him, it was never enough to make up for his failure. Conversations with the princess were always short, to the point, and painful. Much later, 3 years for them, another 45 minutes for me, she tested the waters by saying something flirtatious for him to respond to. I was excited that this was finally going to happen. Again, it didn't. In his depression, the fool blew her off. I was beginning to resent his stubbornness. I felt terrible for the princess, but at the same time, who was I to reprimand BCR's idiocy after what he had been through? It hurt her every time she tried and failed to spark a relationship with him, and she soon began to wonder if it was immoral for her to try. But she was a princess after all, a real lady, and so, as much as it pained her to keep her composure through all this, she never cried. Not even once. The same, however, could not be said for me. I started whimpering. Satish? I responded. You okay? I was struck with a sudden awareness. I awoke suddenly to the reality of a humming AC and my mother calling my name out of concern. I didn't know if she was already awake or had come awake suddenly because of my moan. Frightfully, I worked to take the whimper out of my voice. I'm fine! I'm fine! I was glad that it was too dark to see my tears. I'm also grateful to my mother being either too groggy to follow up or receptive to my assurances that I was fine. Anything and everything that prevented her from turning on the lights so that the whole family could see that I was crying at 2 a.m. What was I supposed to say to everyone if that had happened? That I didn't have a nightmare because I wasn't even asleep? That I wasn't really sad but was crying because of an imagined tragic romance between two characters from an Arabic cartoon with flying robot cats? I turned over after that and decided that it had been too close a call and needed to force myself asleep. But I still couldn't, not without having some kind of ending. So I laughed it up, much the same way Charles Dickens did when he wrote the false ending to Great Expectations for readers who could not handle the real one. The two lovebirds, BCR and Princess Pink, met under a somewhat coincidental setting after saving the universe, and though there was still love and pain between them, they were able to enjoy their friendship and company. Reluctantly, I let the story go and fell asleep. I never followed up from where I last saw them to see if they did get together and make it work or not. Most likely, that story ended where it did. Either that, or I was much too afraid of the consequences of finding out. I didn't watch much Voltron when we got back to Oman either. In truth, it's quite possible that I avoided the show altogether so that my own version could stay real. Thank you. I'm lucky that that is up on Versus Literary Journal for anyone who is interested.